So this is a story from when I was a child. It takes place at my grandma's house. And damn, does it still feel like yesterday. As a child, I'd visit my grandma's house regularly to go get babysit if my parents were on a date. My grandma lived on an old farm in the middle of nowhere and would force me to help with farm chores when I was there. My safe haven was the cat barn. She had a cow, Laurel, and multiple cats lived up in the hay. It was a nice place to get away from everything for a while. If you try to go up there, the cat loft, as I called it, and you didn't get to know where the cats were, they'd go crazy. They'd try to get you out as much as they could. This will come in handy later. So at my grandma's house, there was an entrance to her cellar, and up to that point, I'd never seen her go down there in my life. It was a shorter, white painted door with three deadbolts keeping it shut in different places. On one top of the door, two on the side. Comparing the deadbolts to the door, they had looked fairly new, which freaked me out sometimes. Keeping it shut down in the cellar. Down in that cellar was fairly old stuff when my grandma would host holidays. All the kids would go down there just to mess around with the stuff since it was in an area away from our parents that we would go crazy. Grandma never cared since she never went down there. From the cellar, there was a classic opening from the outside as well. That was usually always deadbolted shut as well. When you'd go downstairs, in front of you there'd be a main area we'd always be, but if you went behind the staircase, there's this place that we called the pit. It was where bricks had been broken down, making a hole in the brick wall, and it was the entrance into another pitch black area. We never went back there except for a dare. The reason it was called the pit was because we could never see the bottom. Well, when I was 10, my grandma passed away in her house that night. She hadn't been found for about a week, so the house had been unattended for a while. Young me was devastated. The wake and the funeral was held at her house, where her husband was also buried. So loads of family had gathered up there that day. The air was thick with gloom. The younger kids and I were thinking about the good times we had at Grandma's and decided to go into the cellar one last time, since we never know when we were going to be back. We went down there to play in the cellar one last time. In hindsight, we probably shouldn't have gone down there, but we did. As we were playing in the cellar, one of my cousins, Kay, told us we should find out what's in the pit. After all this time, he said we could get a flashlight from underneath Grandma's bed. We ran to get it. The other kids were all younger than us, and obviously terrified to look at the pit. But Kay came back down with the flashlight, and we started to make our way over to the pit. The other kids had stayed behind and had actually gone back upstairs to their parents, while Kay and I were filled with excitement. Eventually, we found a small opening to the back of the room, and Kay turned his flashlight on and pointed it into the room. But what we found gave me chills. In the room, there was a bunch of old newspapers on the floor, shaped like a makeshift bed. There were opened, empty cans everywhere, and clothes in a heap in the other corner. When we pointed it to the other side, we found a bucket, which I could only assume was a makeshift bathroom. Next to it was a man with dark, unruly hair. He was leaning back against the wall. He seemed to sleep. But when Kay pointed the flashlight at him, I felt his eyes on us. He quickly got up to his feet and started making his way toward us. Kay squealed and threw the flashlight at him while I started running. Instead of going upstairs, him and I ran outside the cellar doors and opened them. Usually they're locked, but those cellar doors were usually locked from the outside, which is probably how he got in. I could hear him coming behind us quickly, and I looked back for a split second and I saw him stumbling. As soon as the doors were open, Kay and I sprinted to the barn to the other side of the gravel road in our socks. When we got there, I opened the door and closed it after Kay got inside. Started going up to the ladder to the cat loft, and Kay started doing the same. When the door flung open and Kay's ankle was grabbed by the dirty man, I pulled Kay's waist while he started kicking his feet, somehow nailing the guy in the face, and he got up to the cat loft. Just as the man started to make his way up there, Oliver, one of the male cats, flung himself to show his territory and that he wasn't allowed up here. I heard from one of my aunts that while the wake was being held, one of the adults had looked into the window and to see Kay and I sprinting from this unknown man, and he called one of our uncles to go outside with a gun. Uncle Art was a giant dude. He stood 6'6" and was a burly farmer. He had grabbed Grandma's shotgun from the closet and had made his way out to the barn where we were. While Kay and I stood in the back corner of the loft, Uncle Art made himself known and pulled the man down from the ladder with a thud. He had his gun pointed at him and had started yelling. I blacked out. I blacked out what happened next. But when I finally came to, I was sitting in Grandma's house while the cop car had finally shown up after a while. Kay and I were still clinging on to each other and we couldn't speak. But we knew not to go into that cellar ever again. Looking back on it now, it wasn't a wise decision to go down there into the cellar at any time, and I understand why Grandma had all those deadbolts. If the cellar doors opened from the outside, no wonder she never went down there.